I raised my daughter on my own after her mom left us, but now she wants me to pay $100,000 for her wedding. I've been a single dad, now 52 years old, to my daughter Sophia, who's 26, ever since she was just 8 years old. Her mom, Melissa, left us for another man and moved across the country. It wasn't easy, but I did everything in my power to give Sophia a good life. I worked tirelessly as an accountant, often putting in long hours and sacrificing weekends to ensure we were financially stable. I made sure Sophia had everything she needed, from a solid education to extracurricular activities, and I tried to be there for her emotionally. I still vividly remember the day Melissa left. I came home from work to find her suitcases by the door, and Sophia was crying on the couch. Melissa told me she had met someone else and was leaving that very night. She didn't even say goodbye to Sophia properly. She just kissed her on the forehead and walked out the door. Those first few months were incredibly tough. Sophia would cry herself to sleep every night, asking when mommy was coming home. I'd hold her and try to explain, but how do you tell an 8-year-old that her mother chose a new life over her? While grappling with my own grief and anger, I had to stay strong for my daughter. Gradually, we found our new normal. I learned to juggle work and single parenthood, often feeling like I was failing at both. I'd rush home from the office to make dinner, help with homework, and try to give Sophia the attention she needed. There were many nights I'd collapse into bed, exhausted, wondering if I was doing enough. Despite the challenges, Sophia and I were close when she was younger. Every weekend, we'd go to the park, I'd help her with her homework, and we'd have movie nights with homemade popcorn. Sophia was a bright, curious child with a big heart. She'd always make cards for my birthday or Father's Day, filled with glitter and declarations of how I was the best dad ever. Those memories make what's happening now even harder to bear. I tried my best to ensure Sophia had as normal a childhood as possible. I signed her up for dance classes, took her on camping trips, and cheered her on at every school event. To give some perspective, the average time a single parent spends on childcare in a dual-income household is around 3 hours a day. For me, it was often double that. Juggling work and parenthood, I calculated that I spent nearly 4,000 hours over the years just helping Sophia with her schoolwork. It wasn't just about the hours. It was about making every moment count. I wanted her to know that even though her mom was gone, she was still loved and supported. As Sophia got older, things started to change. The sweet little girl who wanted to spend time with her dad transformed into a moody teenager seemingly overnight. Suddenly, hanging out with me wasn't cool anymore. She started pushing boundaries, staying out past curfew, and running with a crowd I wasn't too fond of. We butted heads a lot during those years. I remember one particularly bad fight when Sophia was 16. She came home way past curfew, smelling of alcohol. When I confronted her, she exploded, screaming that I was ruining her life and that she wished she lived with her mom instead. Those words cut deep. I knew she was lashing out, but it still hurt to hear my daughter say she'd rather be with the woman who abandoned her. Despite the rocky period, I still did everything I could for Sophia. I paid for her to attend a good college, covered her rent for an off-campus apartment, and even bought her a car for her 21st birthday. Looking back, maybe I overcompensated out of guilt for her mom leaving. I just wanted her to have the best life possible. During Sophia's college years, our relationship improved somewhat. She'd call home more often, and we'd have nice conversations about her classes and future plans. I started to feel like maybe we'd turned a corner. I was proud of the young woman she was becoming and looked forward to seeing where life would take her. Sophia started dating her now fiancé, Alan, 28M, about 4 years ago, shortly after she graduated college. I had reservations about him from the start. He comes from a wealthy family and has never really had to work for anything in his life. His parents own a successful real estate company, and Alan has a cushy job there that he clearly got through nepotism. He drives an expensive sports car, wears designer clothes, and has that arrogant air of someone who's never been told no in his life. I remember the first time Sophia brought Alan home to meet me. He entered our home with an air of entitlement, barely giving me the courtesy of a handshake. Throughout dinner, he subtly criticized our modest home and appeared genuinely surprised when I mentioned the long hours I often worked. It was obvious he looked down on us for not matching his family's wealth. Alan exuded charm, always ready with smooth compliments or amusing stories at family gatherings. However, I sensed something unsettling about him, his offhand comments and his astonishment at my everyday financial concerns. It was as if he couldn't grasp that not everyone had limitless financial resources. I tried to push my concerns aside since Sophia was so smitten with him. She constantly raved about how Alan treated her like royalty, taking her on extravagant dates and showering her with pricey gifts. I feared he was merely love bombing her, but whenever I voiced my worries, Sophia accused me of jealousy or of trying to spoil her happiness. So I mostly kept my reservations to myself. As Sophia's relationship with Alan grew, I noticed significant changes in her. She became increasingly focused on material possessions, frequently talking about the latest designer handbags or the upscale restaurants Alan took her to. She started expressing excitement about living the high life that Alan's family enjoyed. It was as if the grounded girl I had raised was slipping away. Fast forward to 6 months ago, Sophia and Alan got engaged, and she threw herself into wedding planning with zeal. At first, I was thrilled for her. Every father dreams of the moment he walks his daughter down the aisle, right? But things quickly escalated. Sophia began planning an extravagant wedding at a posh vineyard resort. 300 guests, a weekend-long celebration, and all the trimmings. She wanted a designer dress, a 10-piece band, gourmet catering, the whole 9 yards. When she presented me with the estimated budget, I was stunned. The total came to over $100,000. I sat Sophia down for a serious discussion about the finances. I explained that while I wanted her to have a beautiful wedding, spending that amount was simply beyond my means. I walked her through my financial situation, showing her that with my mortgage, car payments, and retirement savings, there was no way I could come up with $100,000. I proposed contributing $20,000 to Sophia's wedding, believing it was a generous offer given my financial constraints. Her reaction was explosive. She accused me of sabotaging her dream wedding and questioned my love for her. She criticized every luxury I had indulged in, like my fishing boat and the latest TV, claiming they were proof that I had ample funds. She conveniently overlooked the years of hard work and savings it took to afford those things. Her reaction was a shock. This wasn't the same child I had nurtured. I tried to suggest practical alternatives like cutting costs on the wedding or finding a more affordable venue. I even offered to help with DIY decorations to make it more budget-friendly, but Sophia dismissed all my suggestions. In a fit of frustration, she stormed out of my house, slamming the door behind her. Over the next few weeks, she persisted, sending me links to exorbitantly priced wedding dresses and venues. Every time, I reiterated that my budget was fixed at $20,000. Her response was to withdraw, giving me the cold shoulder before returning with renewed demands. Adding to the tension, Alan began making disparaging comments about my financial situation. He'd mentioned how his parents were prepared to spend lavishly on the wedding, contrasting that with my supposed reluctance. He even proposed that I take out a second mortgage to meet the costs. When I refused, he accused me of not caring about Sophia's happiness. In an attempt to find a more reasonable perspective, I reached out to Alan's parents. Their response was patronizing. They were incredulous that I wouldn't sacrifice my financial stability for my daughter's wedding. Alan's mother even offered me a loan, her tone dripping with condescension. I left that encounter feeling belittled and frustrated. The situation came to a head when Sophia visited me unannounced about a month ago. Her demeanor was overly cheerful, which made me wary. She excitedly shared that she had found a dream venue but needed a 50% deposit immediately. Without giving me a chance to respond, she demanded a check for $30,000 on the spot. I was stunned. I reminded her firmly that I had already committed to $20,000. Sophia's mood changed abruptly. She began shouting, accusing me of being selfish, and claiming I never truly loved her. During our confrontation, Sophia lashed out, comparing my actions to her mother's abandonment. She accused me of valuing money over her happiness and threatened that she'd never forgive me if her wedding was ruined. It was as if a mask had fallen away, revealing a completely different side of her. I remained calm, telling her it was best if she left for now. She stormed out, slamming the door with a force that echoed my own sense of dread. I hoped that after a few days apart, we could discuss things calmly and find a resolution. However, what followed was beyond my worst fears. A week later, while managing my finances, I noticed a discrepancy in my savings account. The balance was significantly lower than expected. My heart sank as I examined the transactions and discovered several substantial withdrawals that were unfamiliar to me. It became clear that Sophia had stolen my debit card information and siphoned nearly $20,000 from my account. The realization was gut-wrenching. The betrayal was staggering. I immediately contacted my bank to report the fraudulent activity and cancel my cards. Then I tried calling Sophia. When she didn't answer, I left a voicemail informing her of the theft and demanding that she return the stolen money without delay. A few hours later, Sophia responded via text. Her message was disheartening. "I'm sorry you feel this way, but I had no choice. This is for my wedding, and I deserve it. You're being selfish for not supporting me. I'll pay you back eventually." Her response was infuriating. I replied, giving her 24 hours to return the money or face legal action. Sophia's reply was a series of mocking, laughing emojis. Her lack of remorse was deeply hurtful. When the deadline passed without any word from her, I proceeded to file a police report. The officer who took my statement was empathetic but warned that pursuing charges might be complicated. Since Sophia had access to my financial documents at home, it could be deemed a civil matter rather than a criminal one. Sophia eventually learned of my report to the police. She arrived at my doorstep with Alan, both of them visibly distressed. They pleaded with me to drop the charges, claiming it would ruin Sophia's future if she ended up with a criminal record. Alan added that his family had influential connections that could make things challenging for me if I persisted. The entire situation felt surreal, like I was living in a nightmare. I told Sophia and Alan to leave my house, stating that I'd drop the charges only if Sophia returned the stolen money with interest. After some resistance, she agreed. The money was returned within a few days, but the relief was short-lived. Sophia has since launched a campaign against me. She's spreading stories that I'm a terrible father who's trying to sabotage her wedding out of malice. Most of our extended family now sides with her, and my own sister has called to scold me for being so harsh. It feels like everyone has turned against me. Alan's family has also gotten involved. His mother offered to contribute to the wedding expenses, but her patronizing tone only infuriated me further. I told her to keep her money. Sophia went so far as to post a dramatic account on social media, painting me as an abusive father ruining her wedding. She conveniently left out the fact that she had stolen $20,000 from me. The post has garnered a flood of sympathetic comments and donations for her wedding. I'm disgusted by how the situation is being manipulated. I've attempted to reach out to Sophia to work things out, but she's only willing to talk if I agree to cover the full wedding costs. Alan, who answered her phone, told me I wouldn't be welcome at the wedding unless I made amends. I'm devastated by how things have unraveled. Some friends advise me to just pay for the wedding to avoid missing my daughter's big day, but I can't bring myself to reward her actions. It contradicts everything I've tried to teach her about responsibility and respect. This whole ordeal has left me questioning my past decisions. I wonder if I was too lenient, if I should have encouraged her to be more self-sufficient during college. I believed I was doing the right thing, but now I'm filled with regret. I lie awake at night, missing the little girl who once looked up to me and saw me as her hero. I barely recognize the person Sophia has become, entitled and filled with anger. I'm resolute in my decision not to fund her extravagant wedding. The $20,000 I originally offered stands as my final contribution. It's her choice to accept it or not. If my absence from her wedding is a consequence of this decision, that's something she will have to live with. I've considered reaching out to Melissa, hoping she might influence Sophia's perspective. However, Melissa hasn't been part of Sophia's life for years, and involving her now might only complicate things further. Besides, I'm not sure I can handle the stress of dealing with my ex-wife amidst this turmoil. For now, I'm focusing on protecting myself. I've changed all my passwords, put a freeze on my credit, and secured my important documents in a safety deposit box. It's heartbreaking that I need to take these measures against my own daughter, but I can't afford to be vulnerable to further theft. Despite the situation, my love for Sophia remains. I want her to be happy, but not at the cost of my financial stability and peace of mind. I hope that someday she will see things differently and we can mend our relationship. But for now, I'm unsure of the way forward. Update 1. It's been about 2 months since my last update, and the situation has escalated further. I appreciate everyone who read my story and offered advice. To clarify, I didn't back down from my position. The $20,000 offer remained, but Sophia continued to reject it. Sophia has intensified her campaign against me, posting daily on social media. She's portraying me as a cruel father intent on ruining her wedding, fabricating stories of emotional manipulation and jealousy. It's all false, but it's resonating with people. Alan's family has also gotten more involved. His mother has been actively supporting Sophia's posts and even started a GoFundMe campaign to fund the wedding. Seeing people contribute to this made me feel sick to my stomach. I was stunned by how easily people bought into Sophia's distorted story. Even my own family has turned against me. My sister has blocked my number and instructed the rest of the family to exclude me from any gatherings. I tried to explain my side, but no one was interested. They preferred to believe Sophia's fabricated account. About a month ago, I reached a breaking point. Sophia's maid of honor called me with the news that Sophia had chosen her stepfather to walk her down the aisle. I was blindsided. I hadn't even known Sophia was in touch with her mother or stepfather. Hearing this from a stranger felt like a gut punch. I admit, I lost my composure for a while, drinking heavily and avoiding calls. But then I thought, if they all want to paint me as the villain, I might as well embrace it. I hired a lawyer to compile a detailed account of every expense I'd incurred for Sophia over the years: college tuition, rent, car payments, you name it. I sent her a bill for the total amount, plus interest. Was it petty? Without a doubt. Did it feel satisfying? Absolutely. Sophia was furious. She showed up at my house, yelling that I was trying to destroy her financially. I remained calm and informed her she had 30 days to start repaying the amount, or I'd pursue legal action. Her reaction was priceless, but it only intensified the rift with the family. My sister left me a voicemail, hurling insults. Alan's parents threatened to sue me for emotional distress. I told them to line up. Then I noticed some unusual posts on Sophia's social media. She was suddenly sharing heartfelt updates about reconnecting with her mother, Melissa. There were photos of them shopping for wedding dresses and enjoying meals together, complete with enthusiastic hashtags about their renewed bond. This baffled me. As far as I knew, Sophia hadn't had any contact with Melissa in years. Now they appeared to be close friends? Something felt off, so I decided to investigate. It turned out Melissa reconnected with Sophia about 3 months ago, coinciding with the start of all this wedding chaos. Initially, I thought Melissa might have just wanted to reconcile after hearing about the wedding. But as I dug deeper, my suspicions grew. Through some mutual acquaintances, I discovered that Melissa and her husband have been in serious financial trouble for years. They've been chasing one get-rich-quick scheme after another, never getting ahead. Now suddenly, they're back in Sophia's life as she plans this lavish wedding. It seemed too coincidental. I managed to access Sophia's email account. Don't ask how, but let's just say I still had some old passwords. What I found was infuriating. There were numerous emails between Sophia and Melissa spanning several months. Melissa was clearly manipulating Sophia, encouraging her to demand more and more money from me for the wedding. Melissa had spun a story for Sophia, claiming that I owed her an extravagant wedding because I supposedly ruined her childhood by pushing her mother away. She convinced Sophia that if I truly cared, I would spare no expense for her special day. The emails even included tips from Melissa on how to guilt-trip me and what emotional triggers to use to get me to give in. The most shocking part? Melissa had been asking Sophia for money as well. Initially, it was small amounts, hundreds here and there for wedding expenses. But the requests escalated, and in the latest emails, Melissa was demanding thousands, supposedly for a mother of the bride dress and transportation to the wedding. It was all laid out in the emails. Melissa had orchestrated the entire scheme, manipulating Sophia, pushing for the extravagant wedding, and trying to squeeze money out of both of us. She even suggested that her husband should walk Sophia down the aisle, knowing it would sting me and might provoke me to spend more out of resentment. I was furious. I was angry at Melissa for her lies, at myself for not noticing them sooner, and at Sophia for believing her. I spent hours looking at those emails, trying to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to call Sophia and tell her everything. Another part wanted to confront Melissa and make her admit the truth. A small part of me wanted to watch everything fall apart at the wedding. In the end, I decided to wait. But I couldn't sleep that night. The next morning, my phone was buzzing with notifications. Sophia had posted another rant online, saying I was trying to buy her off with my $20,000 offer. She praised Melissa and said she was happy to have a parent who truly cared about her. Reading that made me snap. I was tired of being the bad guy. I decided to fight back. I spent hours putting together all my financial records, everything I had spent on Sophia over the years. I made a post showing exactly how much I had paid for her college, car, and other expenses. I even included some old quotes where Sophia said she didn't want to see Melissa. I didn't mention Melissa's manipulation. Was it harsh? Yes. Did it risk ending my relationship with Sophia? Probably. But I was done being taken advantage of. The reaction was huge. My phone was flooded with calls and messages. Sophia left a furious voicemail. Alan's parents threatened to sue me for defamation. My sister texted me saying I had ruined any chance of fixing things, but there were also some supportive messages. A few family members have since reached out to apologize for believing Sophia's version of the story without hearing my side. Melissa, however, has gone completely silent. Her social media accounts are deactivated, and she's not returning calls. Last I heard, she and her husband had suddenly left town for a supposed family emergency. As for the wedding, there's been no official communication from Sophia. The venue contacted me, still listing me as a point of contact, asking about unpaid deposits. It looks like things might be falling apart on their own. I'm now left waiting, in the eye of the storm I created, to see what happens next. I feel a mix of guilt and relief. Guilt for possibly ruining my daughter's life, and relief that the truth is finally out. I'm done being manipulated and guilt-tripped. From now on, I'm prioritizing myself. I'll keep everyone updated on what happens next. Update 2. It's been 3 weeks since my last update, and the situation has become even more chaotic. I thought I had seen it all, but apparently there's more to come. The wedding is officially off, at least for now. The venue informed me that all deposits were forfeited because Sophia and Alan missed the final payment deadline by over a week. The situation is even worse than I initially thought. Melissa and her husband hadn't left town for a family emergency. That was a lie. Just 2 days after my last update, Alan called me. Yes, Alan, her fiancé, reached out. Alan called me in a panic, almost unable to speak. Once I managed to calm him, he revealed that Melissa and her husband had disappeared after draining Sophia's bank accounts. It turns out that after my post, Sophia had a breakdown and, in her distress, gave Melissa access to her financial accounts for wedding planning. Melissa exploited this opportunity to the fullest. She emptied Sophia's savings, maxed out her credit cards, and even took out a loan in her name. Then she and her husband vanished. Alan was calling because Sophia was too embarrassed to reach out herself. They were left with no money, deep in debt, and unsure of how to proceed. I had a moment of wanting to laugh and tell them it was their problem now. Instead, I agreed to meet them, driven by curiosity. When I saw Sophia, she was unrecognizable, visibly distressed. The meeting was uncomfortable. Sophia avoided eye contact, and Alan did most of the talking, laying out their grim situation. The details were even worse than I anticipated. Melissa had not only stolen all their money, but also left them with substantial debt. They were now facing potential bankruptcy, and even the possibility of criminal charges due to the fraudulent loan. Sophia eventually spoke, apologizing through tears for her mistakes and admitting she had been easily manipulated. She said she understood if I didn't want to help, but she was desperate for it. I didn't rush to forgive her or offer assistance. I told them I needed time to think and left them at the coffee shop. To add to the chaos, Alan's parents, who had threatened to sue me earlier, contacted me as well. They had disowned Alan, furious that he allowed Sophia to let Melissa access their money. They had cut him off and were distancing themselves from the entire mess. I'm currently grappling with a tough decision about whether to help Sophia and Alan. On one hand, their actions led them to this mess, and part of me feels they should deal with the consequences. Yet I can't help but remember the young girl who used to come to me for comfort. I haven't made a final decision and am discussing the potential legal implications with my lawyer. I don't want to get entangled in their problems and risk my own financial stability. The family situation is still evolving. My sister, who had cut me off, reached out to apologize. It turns out she had been duped by Melissa for wedding expenses and lost a substantial amount of money. She's feeling embarrassed and wants to make amends, and I'm considering whether to reconnect with her. Melissa remains elusive. The police are now involved, but they're not optimistic. Melissa and her husband have a history of pulling similar scams in different states and are skilled at disappearing. Sophia and Alan are now staying with a friend, having lost their jobs due to the chaos. They're facing eviction and are selling their possessions to manage their debts. So, here's where things stand. My daughter and her fiancé are financially ruined and facing legal trouble. My ex-wife is missing with stolen funds, and my family is divided in their views of me. I'm left trying to figure out my next steps. I plan to update you once I decide whether to help Sophia and Alan. In the meantime, I'm taking a moment to process how my life has turned into a drama. After reflecting for 3 months, I've decided that sending Sophia an itemized bill for all I've spent on her was too harsh. While it felt right at the time, it wasn't productive and could damage any future chances of mending our relationship. I've instructed my lawyer to draft a letter retracting the bill. In the letter, I told Sophia that although I was deeply hurt by what had happened, putting a financial value on my support wasn't the right way to handle the situation. I decided to extend some help, but under strict conditions. I understand that some might view this as me being too lenient, but she is still my daughter whom I've supported for years. We met at my lawyer's office, where I laid out the terms of my assistance. I agreed to pay off the fraudulent loan that Melissa had taken out in Sophia's name. In return, Sophia and Alan had to find jobs within 2 weeks, attend financial counseling, follow a budget, and sever all ties with Melissa if she reappeared. I made it clear that this was not an act of forgiveness, but a one-time opportunity to get back on track. Once we agreed on the terms, I paid off the fraudulent loan, which was a significant expense, but a one-time cost. Sophia and Alan were responsible for dealing with their remaining debts. They moved into a small studio apartment and began selling their belongings to pay off their debts. Both Sophia and Alan managed to find jobs within the 2-week deadline. Sophia started working as a waitress, and Alan took a job as a janitor. Their new jobs were a far cry from their previous lifestyle, but they were honest and necessary. Meanwhile, Melissa and her husband faced justice. They were arrested while trying to execute a similar scam in another state, having become careless and overconfident. The trial became a media sensation, with reports highlighting how Melissa's schemes had affected numerous families. Sophia was called to testify, and I was struck by her maturity. She owned up to her mistakes and didn't try to shift the blame. Melissa and her husband were convicted on charges of fraud and grand theft and are facing long prison sentences. Although I'm not expecting to recover any of the stolen money, it's comforting to see them face consequences for their actions. I've kept a distance from Sophia and Alan, only receiving updates on their financial status through my lawyer. Sophia sends occasional brief messages about her job and progress with her debts. I've been keeping my replies to Sophia short and polite. I've also decided to cut off contact with my sister. Her swift betrayal and refusal to own up made me realize that repairing that relationship wasn't worth it. A couple of months into this arrangement, Sophia and Alan hit a rough patch. The stress from their new life got to them, and they ended up having a huge argument. Sophia reached out to me, upset and worried because Alan had walked out. She was afraid he wouldn't come back. I told her that dealing with the fallout from their choices was something she needed to handle on her own. To my surprise, Sophia accepted this without trying to manipulate or plead with me. She thanked me for listening and said she'd figure it out. Alan came back the next day, and it seems they had a serious talk about their future. They appear to be committed to making their relationship work despite the challenges. A few months ago, Sophia asked to meet with me again. We met at a coffee shop, where she apologized once more and expressed a desire to mend our relationship. I told her that I appreciated her apology and was open to staying in touch, but couldn't promise anything more right now. Since then, we've exchanged occasional texts. Sophia recently updated me that she had managed to pay off one of their smaller debts. Our relationship is still strained, but she has invited me to dinner next month. I've agreed to go, though I'm keeping my expectations in check. To everyone who has been following this saga, thank you for your support and advice. It has meant a lot. This will be my last update. I'm ready to step away from this chapter and focus on living my life. Signing off for good.